Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. We're here in Berkshire County in our little mountain town, and in this video we're going to focus on getting some resources up here as well as getting some resources distributed out to some of the other cities on the map that still need resources. And so really what I mean by that is we have this cargo magnet placed over here. We're going to dial in exactly what we want from it. I still am not too sure what the numbers mean, but we can do a little bit of experimenting to figure that out. So maybe get some resources coming up here, and then we're also going to be going around the map. I want to come over to Pittsburgh and get food going from this food processing plant down into Allentown, and then make sure we're also providing enough food from this food processing plant for both Pittsburgh and Allentown. And so that might include us upgrading these farms as well, but we'll come across that if we need to. And so coming back up here, let's find this cargo magnet, and I think initially let's bring in, I want to say planks, and fuel wouldn't be too bad to bring. However, whatever train or however we end up bringing that up, it's going to have to be two separate lines since those don't usually share with each other. Now, I do want to have fuel up here eventually, but I think let's start off with two somewhat easy resources that this city could use. And you know what, thinking about it, I think let's bring up construction materials. So we'll bring up planks and construction materials. The good thing about adjusting or being able to select these is that we can change it over time. So I think right now, sort of the idea that this town is building up, it probably wants building resources. So that would be our justification for bringing planks and construction materials up here. So you get wood and some bricks. And I think that makes sense for this time. Perhaps farther in the future we shift away from construction materials and it ends up being fuel, or we end up bringing in food more sort of final products for this area. But I think for now, keeping that at planks and construction materials makes sense for what this is. And so with this town, I think we're going to prepare for it to have a train station. And because this town is pretty small, I think it's going to be a nice small combination of cargo and passengers all in one station. And then I think we're going to plan for it to run this way out of town, since then we'd be able to connect up to some of our existing tracks to potentially get over to the cargo hub or somewhere else. And then also similarly for a passenger train, maybe down to Roswell or somewhere else. I'm not sure. It's going to be tricky to get a connection into Roswell here, but there might be something else we can do to make a connection between here and up there. And so I think let's start off with this train station. We're going to have to lay out a few roads here. I think we'll get one that just extends this way out a bit more, just for reference for future expansion. And then we need to figure out how far out we came before. Looks like it might have been 40 meters is the distance we've been using. Or it could be 35, I'm not too sure. But I think anyway for these farther out lots, we're going to go out to, I think 50 might be a good number. So we'll do 50. We'll bring this all the way up and over, and then we'll bring these connecting roads across. So now we have something like this. We can get rid of some of these ends, and then I think here's where our train station is going to be. And so again, it's going to be pretty small, although this is already really small. Not sure We can't really break the snap that it has, I don't think. Actually, we can break the snapping that it has, but I still think we need a bit more space to get a station to fit in here. So let's maybe just delete this and we'll get a station placed and then we can adjust our road from there. So we'll get a nice, I think 120 meters is probably a decent size. And then we'll want to make sure this is lined up with our road. Let's actually go with the passenger station since this side's going to be passengers and the other side will be cargo. So we'll have that placed like so. And then here we're going to configure this station. So we're going to have probably one track that does passengers and then one track that does cargo. So let's design a station here real quick and then we'll be back once we finish that up. Alright, and so I think this train station will fit pretty well for what we want it to do. We have one passenger track coming in and then two cargo tracks and cargo platforms on the other side. And I think that makes sense. I think this will turn out pretty well once we start getting some trains coming in and out of town. So let's redo some of this street grid that we had. And I think taking a look at it here, maybe if we go, I guess we could go 90 meters or maybe even 85. Wouldn't be too bad, and we can bring that across. Now unfortunately it doesn't connect, so we're gonna have to redo this until we come across the number where we can connect, and I think that's probably gonna be around 80. So there we can have 80, and then this comes across right in front here, and I think that's pretty good to connect with. And then we can just drag these out and connect these roads back up. Alright, and so now we get to deal with trying to connect this up to the resources that we need. And so let's take a look. I think we need to come down here to our cargo hub. We do have tracks coming out in this direction. Now, the only issue is it doesn't connect up with our other cargo tracks here, and I'm not sure if there's a good spot along here where we can break off and start coming up into this area. Now there are opportunities such as here where we could probably split off, and then we might be able to get enough height to bridge over these tracks. It's just a little bit frustrating that we're not able to reuse some of our existing track for more of this distance. But I think given the elevation change, there's not too much we can do in that regard to really help us out. And so I think let's worry about our cargo line first, because I'm not too sure what our best solution is going to be for our passenger line. I'm still undecided on if we want to come from this central station or if we want to have a separate station in Roswell to connect specifically to this town. But I think I like the idea of us coming on these tracks, coming up the hill, figuring out how we're going to end up doing that, because I'm not too sure how we want to end up coming up this way to begin with, and then getting into our town here. So we can start off pretty easily by just splitting off of this set of tracks. Now we'll bring it out as far as we can go, and we'll keep it flat for the moment. I think if we target 100 speed, that'll be fine. I don't think that's too much to worry about. We can bring the other set of tracks over. Alright, and then from here on out, I think is when we can start working our way up and getting over to a reasonable height. Alright, I think now at this point, really all that's left is our transition up the hill, which I don't think we have figured out just yet. But we can start to figure out how we're going to come out of here. And I think we want all three of these tracks to eventually just merge into one double set. We're not going to have too much traffic coming in and out train-wise to really separate the lines. So I think merging those lines together, bringing it out this way, and maybe following along here while we slowly start descending, and then maybe somewhere along the way is when we can split off our passenger line, and maybe that's how that works. Anyway, let's just try to get something first. So we'll just start here with this set of tracks. Alright, so as a real quick update here, we got our connection made, and it is a pretty rough connection given the elevation that we have to change along the entire route. We have to go from pretty much all the way down here, all the way up to here. If we take a look at our contours map, that's a few hundred meters, I think, if I'm reading that right, to get all the way down to this bridge here from all the way up here. So it's not great, but I think what we have works. We are going to have to be pretty efficient with our routes. Now, I think the passenger train that we're going to be running here is not going to necessarily be worth it at all. I just don't think we're going to be moving enough people from here down to Roswell. So maybe this portion stays as a cargo connection, or maybe it ends up being a passenger connection into Pittsburgh. That's also another option. Now, I'm not entirely opposed to that, because we could split off somewhere here, connect up here, and then have maybe a small station somewhere in this area or somewhere else in Pittsburgh. And then maybe the route to Roswell is just a bus up the mountain. I think that makes a lot of sense, unless we did want to just run a passenger train this way down the mountain into Roswell, and that would just more or less be much more of like a scenic trip. We'd most definitely be losing money on that passenger route, but I think it'd be something fun to have. Maybe it's something to consider. I don't think we're going to get that set up, but I do think we will get the cargo coming up here. So we're going to work on making all of this terrain cutting that we did look a lot nicer. Specifically here, we really messed up the terrain in this area, so it's going to take a little bit to fix it, make it look good, and make it make sense. But I think once we have it, it shouldn't be too bad. So we'll jump back into detailing and all that, and then we'll be back once this line is ready to be set up. Alright, now with this connection made, I think we can finally start thinking about getting a cargo connection up into our town here. So again, we're bringing planks and construction materials. I don't think we're going to worry too much about the planks at the moment. We can worry about that later. Maybe we get the planks from here and we just direct ship those over into the cargo hub. But we're going to leave that for another time. However, we do have some construction materials that we could start bringing up. Now this is just going to be a very generic train. It's really not going to make us, well, this is probably going to lose us a lot of money to start off with. But I think in order to make us money on this line, it might make sense to set up a logging industry somewhere in this area, and I think that would probably make sense with everything that's going on here. We're up in the mountains, there's a lot of trees, a lot of wood, so maybe somewhere over here we have a forest industry, and then we truck those logs in. Those logs then come from this station here, and then those would help fund the return trip all the way down to the cargo hub, where then those logs will get sent to our sawmill, get turned into planks, and then that's how we source our planks for our town. But I think for now, let's just set up a tiny train for construction materials. We'll run that at a loss at the moment, but we do have a plan for it to hopefully end up making us money eventually in the future. Alright, and so our train is going to be this USRA heavy mountain train with enough capacity gondola cars behind it for 200. And now these cars should be able to bring both planks and construction materials up with the same cars. So our only issue actually it can bring logs. So this should work eventually when we set up our full circle. So it'll take planks and construction materials up the hill into our town and then bring logs back down. I think that works out just fine. And so I think all that's left to do is to buy it, and we'll put it on a line running from our hub all the way up into our town up here. Now I think we're getting this error because we don't have any opportunity for these tracks to cross. I believe that, yeah, that did fix it. So now we have this line. Let's manage it so that all the way down here, this is loading planks and construction materials, and then all the way up there, it's unloading everything. And actually, let's just have it only load construction materials for now. We'll have it set up for what we're going to use it as for now, and then we can set it up to do everything else once we get the forest industry set up in this area. And so let's set up our signals on this set of tracks, and then we'll take a look at this train and how it handles the trip up the hill. Alright, and so here's this train that we are most certainly going to lose money on for a good bit, but I think it's nice to have, and really we're at the point where money's not really a problem, so I think we can afford to run a few lines more for looks than for complete functionality. Obviously the goal would be to have them be profitable, but given that we have a plan for that in the future, I think it's okay that we let this run for a little bit without making us any money. Alright, so here's our train getting ready to tackle the steepest section of this route. Now, this is empty, but I don't think that should create any issues for us. I will just speed this up a little bit. I believe we're at about 50% slope around this bend, and that is the steepest it is across the whole line. Everywhere else is somewhere between 20 and 30%. So I don't think that's too terrible for a train line. I just didn't want to go crazy steep up to the maximum of 75% or whatever it is for tracks. And it looks like we do slow down a little bit, but again, that could be the... Actually, I don't think it's the curve. I think it could be just the slope, or it's slowing down for this curve, but I do expect the train to slow down a little bit in this section, but everywhere else should be shallow enough to where it can speed back up again, and hopefully we won't have any or too many issues with the rest of the route. But I think overall this is a fairly decent success, and so we'll leave this to go. Hopefully we'll start to see construction materials slowly factored into our train lines here, but that might take a little bit before we start seeing those pile up. We're actually having construction materials drop off right now. Let's see. Yeah, nothing there yet. Actually, I think what we need to do is we need to make sure that this cargo magnet is covered, which it seems like it is, so I guess we'll wait and see. I'm not sure how these work exactly, if we have to drop off in this area or if being in the catchment area of this station is good enough. So I suppose we might just have to let this run for a bit. We'll check in later on near the end of this video and see if any construction materials are starting to pile up, because then we'll know if we need to set up a small truck line to run through town to drop off the construction materials over to here. But anyway, let's move on over to Pittsburgh, where here we have our food processing plant, and I think we're going to send some trucks over into Allentown to get some food going over here. So let's grab a truck stop, and we can see there's a little bit of food sort of in the middle of town here. I think we'll set it up right on this street here. A drop off right there I think would be fine. And then we need to probably set up a new truck stop somewhere in this complex for whatever our trucks are going to use to pick up the food. Alright, so we have this truck stop now that we can begin using, and this should be a pretty simple setup. We just need to see Allentown needs 90 food, and I guess our closest road depot is down here. We should probably get one somewhere in this food processing area, but actually, yeah, let's just place one somewhere in here. We have a lot of space for stuff anyway. And let's see, we might be able to squeeze that in. Yeah, we can't squeeze that in right there, but we can squeeze it in right next to our dock, which maybe we don't want to do that. Let's see. I think this might be an okay location for a road depot. It's right across from this building here. It sort of fits off in the corner, and so we still have a bunch of space here for some more industry buildings if we ever wanted to add a bit more. And so we can come in here, find some of our trucks, and it looks like this truck can carry food, and it is one of our fastest and highest capacity trucks. It does come at a fairly decent running cost, but I think the distance might make it worth it. So we'll start out with 18, and those will go from there over to Allentown into this drop-off. We'll have to double check once this updates that it's pathing correctly, which it looks like it is, and then it comes in and goes to the correct truck stop. So we'll set this up make sure it's only moving exactly what we need it to. And now we can start to see these trucks go out. It's going to take a bit before our numbers adjust and we start seeing food popping up here. But next, I think our big issue is increasing how much grain and food that we're moving on this boat line here. And so currently, if we check, we have this food processing plant currently supplying Pittsburgh, Roswell, and Allentown. Now, I'm not expecting this to fully supply all of those cities, since specifically Pittsburgh is already requesting 800. We're only serving about a quarter of that. And so I think if we take a look at just rough numbers for a moment, here in our consumer tab, Pittsburgh is currently taking 220. I think if we maybe bump that up and assume 300 for Pittsburgh, same for Roswell, let's assume maybe 150 for Roswell, and then Allentown needs 100. So let's just go through, add those up real quick. And I believe that gets us about 550 that I think we should target for our food production here. Now that does mean coming over to our farms, we're only shoving out 400 per farm. And so that totals 800 that we have in here. And again, since food is a 2-to-1 reduction, we need to double the 550 target number to 1100, which is the total amount of grain that we'll want to be pushing out of this area. And so really that's just one more industry in this area, and we'll be up to 1200 grain. So I don't think that's terribly unreasonable. Now, thinking about how we want to go about placing it, I think probably what we can do is we can come across this river here, put a few fields down, have an industry, and then that would probably cover enough area to justify having a third farm in this area. So we need to bridge over this river. So I think we'll go with this tiny bridge here. That doesn't look too awful. Unfortunately, we don't really have wooden bridges. I'm sure I could find some on the workshop, but we just don't have any at the moment. But the bridge we came up with, I think, works pretty well either way. And then I think we'll have this come straight out. And then this is where our industry is going to be. Alright, so with this farm placed, now we can expand our roads, place down a few fields, really get this area looking good, and then we can increase our grain production overall. Alright, and so now we have a third farm in this area. Let's get to work on setting it up. So this will need to plan for 400 rate coming out of it. Let's find our road depot. We'll come down here. Now, I think we'll go with these trucks, as I think these ones might be a bit overkill given the short distance that they're going. So we'll find a tipper truck. We'll probably need about 15, 16 of them. And these will go on a new line coming from here, and then let's just make sure, so we do have enough platforms for a second line. We'll make sure this is set up, and we should be all good. And so we'll also want to change up this boat line to upgrade it to a rate of 1200. We're not going to change any of the other functionality things going on with it. But I believe we're currently running these boats, and we do have some better ones that we can use. And so I think we get a good trade-off here with this towboat. It's not as fast, but it does carry a good amount more for only a slight increase in running cost. So we'll do that. We can see our rate instantly went up a little bit. We're almost at the point that we need it to be at. So I think just simply getting 2 or 3 more ships should get us right to the 1200 that we need. And we can see that right there. Update. And we'll keep that as it is. And then some other minor upgrades I think we can do in the area is we'll upgrade this road to be a country road all the way up to where it meets our dock, and then I suppose we could upgrade it all the way until it gets to this portion. There's not really much need for it to be a paved road past this point, so we can keep that, and that'll just allow for our trucks to get there a bit faster, since I believe the dirt roads, yeah, this dirt road has a top speed of 10 miles an hour. Alright, and so moving on from that, it's going to take a while before we start to see those numbers adjust, but I think that's mostly all that I wanted to really connect up so far. However, there's a few things I want to touch up on real quick. We do have Houston up here starting to build some roads, so I think real quick, let's just expand the grid up 1 or 2 blocks, and I think once we expand that, we'll be at a pretty decent stopping point for this video. So we'll give Houston some space, and then when we're back, we'll take a look at our mountain town and how that's going. Alright, and with that quick upgrade, we now have a good bit more city blocks for Houston to grow into, since it was starting to level off. We're running out of space, but the city should be doing pretty well now. We can see it's trying its best to take over some of the few roads that we were loose enough to let it take. We're just going to come back through and make sure we lock up all these roads. And so I think we should be good there. And I think now with this, let's take a closer look at what we've done so far in this video. And then when we come back, we'll talk about some of our next steps and future projects. Alright, and so here we are on our cargo line running up to our little town. You can see the farms that we just put in over here on the left, and Pittsburgh off in the distance out there. It hasn't made a return trip yet, but we can come over to our cargo hub, and we can see here we're starting to get some construction materials building up. So that is good news. Again, unfortunately, it's a little hard to tell how much we need when this doesn't give us a great number in terms of rate. I'm not sure how much one daily is converted into that rate number, so it might just end up being a bit of trial and error for us to get a proper measurement for the load that this train will be taking. But it is a good sign that we are starting to see some construction materials go up, and of course, as this continues to go on, we can probably adjust those numbers as we see fit as time goes on. But anyway, talking about some next steps and future projects, I still want to get a name for this town. We have started to get a few good recommendations that I've seen, so I'm going to probably give it one more video or one more week for names, and then hopefully we'll pick something out here soon, one that I like. So keep giving name suggestions for this town. And then while we're up here, I think getting a passenger connection would be nice. It's not necessary, but I think just for the look and feel of this town, having a passenger train coming up here would be ideal. And again, I think what we're going to end up doing is connecting to this set of tracks here, and then having a passenger stop somewhere in this area. I just think that's what makes the most sense, as opposed to trying to work a train line down to Roswell. I just think the elevation change is too steep given the slope of the tracks that we can use. I mean, even if we went on a direct line down to Roswell at max slope, we would make it, but I mean, is that really worth it? I think, again, we can have sort of a more performative line coming down here, and that train might end up being decent. It might just end up being quicker for them to drive, but those are all options that we can set up later on. And then one last thing while we're up here in this corner, I think getting some bus connections might finally be useful for this area. So I think we'll have a main bus stop here in this town, probably right by this train station. And then we'll have probably just one line. I don't think we need multiple, or maybe we'll have two lines, but one that comes, and maybe there's a stop down here at the dam, but then a station in this area, which is sort of what we're using as a main sort of tourist area for the lake. So this is sort of the central area, probably like an administrative building, and then some of the courts and pool. And then either continuing that line or a separate line, having a bus come and just do like a short loop through this area. Now this would probably only be like one or two buses. It wouldn't need to be anything too crazy since there's really not that many people up here. But if we do check our destinations layer, we are getting a fair amount of traffic on these roads. So I think having one from our town to here would be beneficial, and then maybe a bus line from here down into Roswell as well. And then we also have this food processing plant in Pittsburgh. I think I want to start focusing a little bit more on that, especially considering Pittsburgh needs a lot of food that it's currently not getting. So I think maybe pretty soon we'll look to expand these farms once again. We'll probably end up with 4 industries, and that'll probably be our max for this area. So maybe we get another farm over here or on the other side of the river, or maybe even down into this area. But I think expanding these farms would be beneficial, so then we can max out our food processing plant here. The numbers obviously aren't fully updated yet, but they are getting there. And so once this is maxed out, we can start to continue considering how we can get food into Pittsburgh, into our cargo hub. And so that way we can provide more of these cities up in this direction with food and other resources that it will eventually need. I think getting food here will be pretty vital, and it will really start to open us up to some extra options of larger trains bringing resources into areas such as Tacoma. Maybe we can get food into Lincoln by truck, and then of course I think Roswell's already getting food, so there's nothing really to worry about there. And then we'll probably pick up right where we left off in this video with expanding Houston. I think I want to fill out the road grid all the way up into this area. This shouldn't be too hard of a project, or at least this portion of the city shouldn't be. We do have this area that we have to figure out still, but maybe we'll focus on this area. I'm not too sure how we want to split our time with that, but I think this will probably be the next thing we do, is just cleaning up the streets of Houston, extending them, giving Houston some clear boundaries, and hopefully leaving it in a really good spot to continue growing and moving forward. And then we also have some traffic in some areas. We have unlocked some better trucks recently, so I think maybe for lines such as this stone line, and then some of these grain lines, we'll think to upgrade our trucks just so we have fewer trucks running back and forth. I think that'll help clean up our streets a bit. Specifically here with all of these trucks, it's becoming a mess. And then we can start to think about sending food on our highway into some of our cities, so that maybe that helps lighten the load on some of our other lines. And so with that, I think that's going to be all for this video. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.